Good afternoon, Vandal fans, and welcome to another edition of Fourth and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, and today I'll kind of be highlighting some of the key performances of the Mike Keller Invitational Track and Field Tournament. I will be discussing the recent football spring practices as well as a Q&A with University of Idaho President Chuck Staben, and then I will be updating you on the latest March Madness news. Well, first off, let's get into football. The Idaho Vandals began their spring practices on Thursday afternoon. The team, with some notable absences as well as some new additions to the team. Obviously, first off, the biggest absence of the spring is starting quarterback Matt Linehan. He is out for the semester with a foot injury. It's unidentified. Idaho head coach Paul Petrino will not discuss the nature or extent of the injury other than that the quarterback will be out and he will not be joining the Vandals until the summer months when it is fully healed. Also, the Vandals lost their one of their coaches. Let me find this information real quick. Bryce Erickson, the quarterback's coach, former quarterback's coach, left Idaho on February 26th after it was announced that he was hired as the head coach at Lake City High School in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Petrino said the decision was made by Erickson as he considered his family, and he said, quote, "It was something that Erickson felt like was for his family to be around his kids more," end quote. As a result, Petrino said wide receivers coach Charlie Molnar will assume coaching duties at the quarterback position, and that Petrino would begin working with the wide receivers. So kind of an interesting coaching shuffle if you look at it that way. But also, the Vandals gained a new new linebackers coach in Troy Purcell. He was the quarterback at Bozeman High School in Montana. Actually won, I think, three high school championships with Bozeman, and then an extra one with a lower high school. I believe it was a Class A team. But Petrino said he's one of the best high school coaches in Montana. He's going to bring an energy and a passion to the Vandals defense, something I think the team needs after kind of a lack of fire on the defensive line, I would say. But obviously those are the two biggest coaching impacts this spring. But really, looking at the Vandals this spring, there's going to be a lot of position battles at some key roles. So first off, obviously running back Elijah Penny left the program last year. He had a huge impact as far as bouncing off the offense with some sort of strong ground presence. You know, obviously the Vandals are a pass-first team with Linehan, who has a great arm and has had a lot of success through the air. But this ground game is something that they're going to really have to consider because they need to develop a strong presence with it, so that way it's not that Linehan is forced to throw again and again and again, that they have a balance that they can bring to it and counter and kind of keep the defense off guard. It's going to be tricky to do that this year, though, because they have a lot of young talent, but that's the thing, though, is that they're young and inexperienced. They haven't gotten to see that time on the field as much as they'd want. So you have Aaron Duckworth. He's going to be a junior next year. He's a sophomore. Obviously, I believe he has the most experience on the team. Right now, I believe he had something like 43 carries last year for 200-something yards and 3 touchdowns. So he comes in, obviously, poised to take over that role from Penny. Obviously, if he's the starter, he would get some deeper numbers than that. But he seems to be the guy with all that experience that the Vandals will look for in that situation. But obviously, there's some other guys who can make some impact. One of those is Isaiah Saunders. He's probably the key competition right now for Duckworth. Saunders had 40 yards on 13 attempts last year. Obviously not a whole lot of experience, but you know, he did see the field for a few plays, and that's always helpful. The next two guys obviously battling in this position are kind of new to the team. They haven't seen time on the collegiate gridiron, and that's always a little bit worrying as far as bringing them into the starting role, just because they did great in high school. And looking at these guys, we have Brantley, he was a redshirt last year, and then we also have Thigpen, who is a recruit coming into the program this fall. But these guys were great in high school. Brantley was the former MVP of the Sunset League, and he is almost a dual threat as a potential passing option. He had 7 receptions for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns at Los Alamitos High School. But also Thigpen led the baseline league with over 1,800 yards on 260 carries. So these guys saw some time in high school, made an impact with their team. But the thing is, the collegiate game is so different than high school. It's faster, it's quicker. These guys hit harder. You have to make decisions, in a smaller time frame. It's just a lot more tricky, and it's tough when you're a high school recruit to come in and to see time on the field, and not only time, but to find success. So it'll be tricky. I'm not sure if Petrino will be able to duplicate last year's running game, which is, I'm pretty sure he's expecting not to duplicate it, but to try and find another way to find success with these young guys, maybe create some offensive schemes that open up some holes for them and give them these opportunities that they wouldn't normally get to see as a younger player on the team. So that's obviously the key position battle that we're looking at right now. There's some question as far as the passing game, not the passing game, but the receivers. After Desmond Epps left the program last year for a lot of off-field incidents, so to say, it'll be tricky for them to find out, who's gonna stand out for Linehan on the field, who's gonna be the guy that he goes to, and there's. Kalen Hightower really stepped up for the Vandals last year. He was the team's second leading receiver behind Epps. Really played a huge role when Epps left the program, kind of stepping up and almost having no drop-off for Linehan in this passing attack. But we have a junior college transfer that I'm really interested in seeing on the field, Alfonso Onunwar. I believe he played at Coffeyville Community College. From what I heard during spring practices, the guy can really jump. He's quick, and during those passing attacks where you have those lob balls near the end zone goal line, they're saying he can really step up for the team. So another guy to look at, David Ungerer. He missed last year with a foot injury. He was in the mix at well during spring practices, I heard, so potentially look for him to maybe step into the role as well. But really, I think a key component of this passing attack from the Vandals is obviously the tight end position. I think they got involved a lot more than you would normally see at other college programs. You have Deion Watson and Trent Cowan both switched out at the role and did fantastic as far as contributing to the offense and being this secondary option that most teams wouldn't initially focus on. So these guys were doing fantastic last year, and I think as far as the tight end position, I think they'll both be able to see time on the field, and it's not going to be one over the other at this point. They're both pretty good, and it's always nice when you have two people at the same position who are almost equals. But the Vandals are an offensive-oriented team. There's no doubt about that. They've really changed their identity, I believe, and become this, scoring team. So even when they lost to programs like Auburn last year, they scored 35 points, and they did great in that situation. So, but if you're looking at their defense, I feel like that's their Achilles heel, specifically the defensive line. It'll be really, I don't know, they had difficulty. I called the game against Appalachian State last year, and once Appalachian State realized that the defensive line was shaky, they ran, and they ran and they ran and they ran, and I think it was their second string running back ended the game with like 300 yards because their primary guy was out, and it just shows you that is something that the Vandals will need to work on in the trenches, being able to halt that defensive or halt the running game with a strong defensive line. I think the program is needing to focus on that because they do have some good cornerbacks. And looking at their cornerbacks, Jason Jordan, probably the top returning guy. He missed every single game last year except for I think 3 with a thigh contusion. But he's going to be back with the program, which is fantastic. There's also Dorian Clark and Deji Hampton, who are probably going to be in the mix, either the cornerback or maybe a safety slot based on where the team puts Jordan. So it'll be they have some good players, some good athletes at that position, but honestly the Achilles heel is this defensive line. So they'll have to be able to replace Ryan Howard and Quentin Bradley. Quentin Bradley obviously is attempting to get into the NFL, and he's in attendance, I believe, at practices, spring practices. So hopefully he'll be able to pass along some knowledge to these younger guys who are fighting for his role. But obviously, I think the mix of players who were generally included the most during spring practice were Glenn Antoine, Kevin White, and Kalen Smith. But Kalen Smith was one of those defensive ends who kind of rotated at the buck linebacker spot as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the Vandals do as far as the defensive line and who makes a name for himself this spring and carries that momentum over to the fall. Because I think they need somebody in that position to be able to hold down the fort and slow the running game of any other program. Because right now it seems like the Vandals almost want to be involved in like a shootout with the team, just so that defense kind of isn't the main focus of the game. But I think Paul Petrino and the Vandals are focusing on this position during the spring to try and get some good guys in there and switch up the look of their D and maybe slow down the rushing attack of some of their other Sunbelt opponents. But we can look at the Vandals football schedule coming up. 2016 looks like a favorable year for the program. It's not too difficult, I'd say, of a schedule. I mean, their first 4 games are kind of tricky, but after that, it's not that bad at all. So obviously, September 1st, they open against Montana State. Montana State is a Big Sky program, so with the news of the Sun Belt's decision to drop Idaho as a conference member, most people know that the Big Sky has extended an open invitation to Idaho football. Unfortunately, that invitation means the Vandals would have to drop to FCF status, which is not ideal as far as the number of scholarships and the revenue generated by the team. So almost a game, so to say, where you wonder, is this I don't know the word, but is this a potential game that reflects, is Idaho more geared towards the Big Sky, or are they going to blow out Montana State and make a statement and say, we belong in the FBS, we need to do something about this? Obviously, then their next 2 games are tough. They play a couple of potentially top 25 Pac-12 teams in Washington and Washington State. And then they travel on the road to UNLV. And, I mean, you look at those 3 games, it's a tough 3-game stretch for the Vandals, but I believe if they come out of those first 4 games with a 2-2 record, that they could be bowl-bound very easily. And here's why I say this. Montana State, Big Sky team, I think the Vandals have a very good chance of winning that game. Then that could be a win. Obviously, probably a stretch to see the Vandals beating Washington or Washington State, but you never know what happens. That's why they play the game. Let's just hypothesize and say they go 0-2 during that stretch so that they have a 1-2 record. Then they face UNLV. And that's a game where UNLV is expected to win, but the Vandals do have some hope in that matchup. And I think if they're able to win that game and to come into conference play with a 2-2 record, that they have a very good shot of reaching the 6-win mark needed to be in a bowl game. Because they'll host Troy, and Idaho beat Troy on the road last year, even though they had a number of issues with traveling. I know they had some plane delays, and they got in just hours before the game started. So if they can come away with a victory in those conditions, it shouldn't be too hard to ask the team to come away with a victory like that on their own home turf. And then they travel to Louisiana Monroe. That was their double-digit win last year for the team at home during homecoming. Even though it's on the road, I still think they have the opportunity to come away with a win there. Then they host New Mexico State. Obviously, that was a close game as well last year. They'll travel to Appalachian State. That is a tough environment, no matter what team you are in the Sun Belt Conference. It's hard to see the Vandals coming away with a strong victory there, but that would just probably be a tough game for the Vandals. And then they have a bye week. Then they travel to Louisiana Lafayette, and then Texas State. So kind of a tough 3-game stretch there. Hopefully they can snag a win out of one of those 3 games. They have a bye week, and then they return home for their final 2 games against South Alabama and Georgia State. So kind of a favorable schedule for the Vandals looking at next season and their potential to reach a bowl game. Obviously, that's something the Vandals are really looking to do as a way to, I guess you could say, prove the Sun Belt wrong in their decision to let go of Idaho. Because when we were talking to Carl Benson, the Sun Belt commissioner, he did talk about location being an issue, but also on-field performance. He said he wants teams in the conference who can win championships and bowl games, and that it would have been a factor, but he can't hypothesize about the future and use that in the decision to keep or let go of Idaho. So kind of a statement for the Vandals if they can reach a bowl game, and not only reach a bowl game but win a bowl game. So we'll have to see what the Vandals do next year, but obviously they have to figure out some positions beforehand, and then be able to develop the talent and the backups to be able to be competitive in the Sun Belt Conference this year. So let's shift our attention real quick to track and field. The University of Idaho hosted the Mike Keller Invitational yesterday. It was part of the beginning of the outdoor season, and Idaho track and field coach Tim Colley said, quote, "These early meets are about getting out and competing and doing what you can from there. I thought the team did great. I don't think you can ask for much better this time of the year. We had some good sun, some decent performances, and the team supported each other all day." We had several Vandals come out on the top of individual events. Andrea Pikes won the 100-meter dash with a time of 12.76 seconds. Kalia Bass took home the win in the 200 meters at 26.86 seconds. Aaron Hagan took the 800 meters with a time of 2 minutes, 18 seconds, .55. Marquita Palmer won the 1500 meters at 4:43.06. Wednesday Walton was victorious in the 400-meter hurdles with a time of 66.04 seconds. Reed Richardson won the high jump with a leap of 1.45 meters, while Taylor Fienar took the javelin throw with a distance of 37.41 meters. On the men's side, Ben Ayisu-Wata won the 100-meter dash at 11.27 seconds. He also came out on top in the 200 meters with a time of 22.47 seconds. He would later combine with teammates Ian Middleton, Drew Thompson, and Kaiser Gillespie to take the 4x100-meter relay at 42.59 seconds. Then we had some more in the kind of the field events. Derek Haas won the javelin with a distance of 62.112 meters, and Arfexad Carroll edged out the competition in the long jump with a leap of 6.7 meters. So good showings by our Vandal athletes. Kind of some interesting weather over the past few days. I know it was hailing and raining and sunny, and the fact that we had those athletes come out on top during outdoor events is very good for the program, and especially on their own home meet, to be able to find that success is very, very good for the program. And we've been following the track and field team this spring, and we've had some dominating performances. Kinsey Gomez, Ben Ayisu-Wata, and it's good to kind of see them carry that momentum over from kind of the indoor season into the outdoor season. Another team that we've been following with a lot of that has found a lot of success is the men's tennis team. The number 59 nationally ranked BYU Cougars shut out Idaho on the first of two weekend events at the BYU indoor tennis courts on Friday. The Vandals just couldn't find the effort to top BYU. They did well. They had a good start in doubles play. Mark Kovacs and Lucas Quintino scored Idaho's only win of the day with a 6-3 win on the number 3 court. But the Cougars took the doubles point by claiming both of the other doubles matches. And then in singles play, the Cougars won on, I think, just about every single court. Let me double check the box score. Yes, BYU earned all 6 singles victories. Senior Odin Barta had perhaps the best competition, forcing a 3 sets, 6-2, 5-7, and then 1-0. So he had a strong performance. I mean, the BYU is a very good tennis program. To be ranked 59th in the nation is quite an achievement. And the Vandals were competitive. In conference play, they've been doing really, really well, but just weren't able to find that extra bit Friday afternoon. The team moves to 11-5 on the season, 5-2 in conference play. Not too many more matches. They face Portland State next Saturday, and then Eastern Washington the following Wednesday, and then Weber State. All 3 of those games will be at home. So for Vandal tennis fans, definitely stop by Moscow on April 2nd at 11 a.m. to catch your Vandal men in action. While we're talking about the men, we might as well talk about the women as well. They've kind of been having a little bit of a skid, so to say. They lost to Sacramento State and San Jose State March 9th and 19th and 20th by identical scores of 3-4. Just could not. Came down to the final match of singles play, and they just could not come away with the victory. But somebody who's been really, really on fire, I guess, for the program and doing really well for the team is a freshman, Mariana Petri. She was named the Big Sky Player of the Week for the second time this spring. And she's a freshman from Italy. She went 3-0 for the Vandals on the number 1 singles court during a road trip in California. I believe right now she's 14-2 in singles play. and undefeated in Big Sky Conference play. So absolutely superb play from the freshman, coming in and contributing immediately to the women's tennis team. So good to see that. And yeah, just some good numbers from the freshmen. But as far as sports at the University of Idaho, that's about all you have over the weekend. But I guess we can turn our attention real quick to March Madness, giving you some updates and scores before I have to head out of here. So last night, Oregon just absolutely dominated number 1 seed Oregon, beating them 80-68. Buddy Hield has looked absolutely phenomenal and unstoppable this year for the Sooners, especially during tournament play, posting ridiculous numbers every single game. I think, honestly, right now, Oklahoma, if I had to redo my brackets, I would put Oklahoma as the national championship because they just look unstoppable right now. A little bit of a closer game between Villanova and Kansas. The number 2 seed, Villanova, actually earned the 5-point victory over Kansas, who was my previous pick for a national championship. So that busted my bracket. Those two programs, both number 2 seeds, Villanova and Oklahoma, will face each other next Saturday, April 2nd, in the Final Four. But there's some other games today, and obviously a Cinderella story, so to say. Number 1 seed North Carolina will face Notre Dame, the number 6 seed. That will happen today at 5:49 p.m. I believe that's Pacific time. And then in the Midwest bracket, we have number 1 Virginia facing number 10 Syracuse at 3:09 p.m. Obviously, the Syracuse beat Gonzaga. That was a really entertaining game. Came down to the final seconds, but Syracuse is still in the tournament, looking to make the Final Four as a number 10 seed, which would be quite the achievement for the Orange Men. Then the winners of those 2 games will face each other in the Final Four next Saturday. So some real good games today. Definitely check them out if you're a fan of college basketball. There's no better time during the year. Just a fantastic atmosphere for college basketball and for these athletes who are trying to raise their draft stock and lead their team deep into the NCAA tournament. So there's always some magic surrounding March Madness, and you won't want to miss it. But I believe that's about all the time we have today. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to 4th and Downtown. We'll be back next Friday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. We'll also be discussing some football practices and then some other athletic events throughout the week. Just a lot, not a lot going on, but we will keep you updated, especially on some of the sports heading into their final stretch, such as tennis and track and field. So I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. Always, here's our shameless self-promotion. Follow us on Twitter at VandalNation for the latest news, scoring updates, etc. on the University of Idaho and their athletic programs. You can also find us on Facebook, VandalNation, but also we are on Instagram, The VandalNation. We post photos from our photographers and some of their some of their efforts in shooting assignments, and then also, as always, pick up a copy of the ARG around campus and check out some of the latest stories that our writers in our department is covering. And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to tune back in Friday to 89.3 FM KUOI Moscow.